Nathan Kasich, and this is my session 2 presentation. The relationship between science and faith has been a dynamic and complex one, shaped by centuries of historical developments and philosophical debates. The evolution of this relationship reflects broader changes in human understanding and the quest to reconcile empirical evidence with spiritual beliefs. Historically, the relationship between science and faith can be traced back to ancient civilizations, where mythological and religious frameworks often provided the context for understanding natural phenomena. For instance, in ancient Greece, philosophers like Aristotle and Plato began to explore natural explanations for cosmic and physical processes, laying the groundwork for later scientific inquiry. Despite their contributions, religious beliefs still played a central role in interpreting the cosmos. During the Middle Ages, the relationship between science and faith became more formalized within the framework of Christianity. Scholasticism, exemplified by figures such as Thomas Aquinas, sought to harmonize Christian theology with the philosophical ideas of Aristotle. Aquinas argued that reason and faith were but complementary ways of understanding one truth, asserting that the empirical investigation could support and illuminate religious doctrines. The Renaissance and the Enlightenment periods marked significant shifts within this relationship between science and faith. The scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries, driven by figures such as Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, etc., emphasized observation and experimentation as primary methods for acquiring knowledge. This period saw the rise of a more distinct separation between scientific and religious domains, as the success of scientific methods began to challenge the more literal interpretations of religious texts. Philosophical discussions during the Enlightenment further highlighted the growing tension between science and faith. Thinkers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant questioned the limits of human reason and the role of empirical evidence in the understanding of metaphysical and theological claims. The Enlightenment's emphasis on rationalism and skepticism contributed to a more secular worldview, often placing science in opposition to traditional religious beliefs. In the 19th and in the 20th centuries, the relationship continued to evolve between science and faith with the advent of Darwinian evolution and advancements in cosmology and physics. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection, for example, prompted debates about the compatibility of scientific explanations of life's origins with religious accounts of creation. At the same time, the development of quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity introduced new ways of understanding the universe that both challenged and complemented various theological perspectives. More contemporary discussions often focused on the ways in which science and faith can be seen as distinct, yet potentially complementary domains. Many modern thinkers advocate for a view of science, and faith as addressing different kinds of questions. Science, explaining the how of natural processes, while faith seeks to address the why of purpose and meaning. This perspective aims to reconcile scientific insights with spiritual beliefs, suggesting that both can coexist without necessarily contradicting or undermining one another. Excuse me. Overall, the historical and philosophical evolution of the relationship between science and faith reflects an ongoing dialogue about the nature of knowledge, the limits of human understanding, and the search for meaning in an increasingly complex world. The relationship between science and faith has evolved through various historical epochs and philosophical debates. From ancient mythological explanations to more contemporary discussions about the nature of knowledge, this relationship reflects an ongoing dialogue about the interplay between empirical evidence and spiritual beliefs. As we were asked to choose a myth for this discussion and for this presentation, the myth that I decided to go with was the Greek myth of Prometheus. Within Greek mythology, Prometheus is a titan who defies Zeus. Zeus is the king of the gods. By stealing fire from Olympus and giving it to humanity, this is how Prometheus openly defies Zeus. The gift of fire symbolizes knowledge and enlightenment within this myth. Knowledge and enlightenment empowers humans to progress and develop in civilization. Prometheus' act of defiance towards Zeus represents a significant movement where human beings, through acquiring divine knowledge, challenge the established order, two of which it was all given to them in the first place. Now, let's dive into some takeaways of this myth. These are not my own personal takeaways. These are more unbiased takeaways in a way. Knowledge and power. The myth reflects a belief that knowledge, symbolized by fire, can transform and empower humanity. This presupposes that acquiring knowledge is a valuable and sometimes rebellious act against divine or traditional authority. Point number 2, divine versus human agency. Prometheus' act challenges the boundaries between divine and human agencies, suggesting that the human pursuit of knowledge can transcend and maybe even conflict with divine or traditional boundaries. And finally, number 3, the role of curiosity. The myth emphasizes curiosity as the quest for understanding as central to the human progress, suggesting that this very search, this very quest for knowledge, is an intrinsic part of the human condition. Within this presentation, we were also prompted to make a series of questions as well. Here are mine. Here are mine. Does the myth of Prometheus reflect the broader historical tension between divine authority and human knowledge? That was question number 1. Question number 2. In what ways did the scientific revolution contribute to the separation of scientific and religious domains? Excuse me. No, question number 3. How can the contemporary view of science and faith as addressing different types of question, how for science and why for faith, help reconcile apparent conflicts? Question number 4. Do you think that the philosophical presuppositions underlying myths like Prometheus, for example, have any relevance to modern debates about science and faith? If so, how? And finally, question number 5. What are some examples of contemporary issues where science and faith intersect? And how are they addressed in today's discourse? These are the references for the presentation itself, in which I will have listed once I turn in the slides for this presentation. But here are our references, which includes God in the Dock by C.S. Lewis, Science and the Mind of the Maker, Religion and Science by Helen de Cruz, and Prometheus, The Life of the Myth by D.L. Pike. Furthermore, within this presentation, we were also prompted to make a note-taking outline. Here is mine. Again, this will be turned in as a PDF document within this presentation. Here's mine. Introduction. Overview of the historical relationship between science and faith. Key historical periods and figures, as we discussed within the presentation. Point number 2, historical myth. The Greek myth of Prometheus, as highlighted within the presentation. Summary of the myth, as highlighted in the presentation, and all the key philosophical themes within the myth. Philosophical presuppositions. Knowledge as empowerment, as point A. Point B, conflict between divine and human agency. And point C, the role of curiosity in human progress. Point number 4, historical context was also taken into account during the putting together of this presentation. Point A, ancient Greece and their contribution by mythological explanations. The Middle Ages, scholasticism, and its harmonization with religion. The scientific revolution, the shift to empirical investigation and empirical methods. The Enlightenment, rationalism versus traditional beliefs. The modern era, evolution and cosmology. Some contemporary concessions towards the end of the presentation included compatibility versus conflict between science and faith. Distinct domains, such as the how for science versus the why for religion. Within this presentation, we were also asked and prompted to provide a for further study list, which included some extra sources outside of these references of the presentation itself. So for further study on this topic, I would recommend books such as The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas S. Kuhn, The Compatibility of Science and Religion by Peter Harrison, and God and the New Physics by Paul Davies. For even further reading, I would also suggest some articles such as Science and Religion, a Historical Introduction, which is from the Cambridge Companion to Science and Religion, and as well as The Role of Myths in Scientific Understanding, which is found in the Journal of the History of Ideas. That concludes my presentation. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Nate Kasich, and I appreciate your time in watching my Session 2 presentation.